Today, after many years of my life transformation, my change from fundamentalist Christianity all the way to atheism and humanism, which is about approximately 23 years, I've had many, many individuals, friends, Christians and even atheists that want to know my story. And I think it's very important to emphasize what happened in my life. Number one reason for that would be for you Christians that are interested in another worldview. You're at that point in your life where you're just wondering if there's more than this mythological concept of Christianity. It'd be good for you to understand someone like me who came from a extreme Christian background and explain to you how real of a Christian I really was and how I went through the change. And I'm hoping that it will benefit you and help you make that choice in your life. That's what I'm hoping to help many of you to do. So today is going to be entitled, this is episode 1. I'm just going to call this My Story. This will be part 1. We'll do part 2 and then part 3. Okay? So today, my story, the early years of indoctrination. So I'm just going to kind of chill back today. Didn't bring my King James Holy Bible. No preaching today. We're just going to relax and talk, and I'll try to slow down a little bit and have a little fun, and hopefully I will remember the point. So a lot happened the last 58 years of my life, since 1957. So I wrote it down on paper, and I've got a few little notes. I want to keep on track so I don't start chasing rabbits and forget where I'm at. So basically, let's do 1957, way back in the day, all the way to 1969. So number one, I was born into a very, very strong fundamentalist Christian family. Now, we talk about, if you've heard some of my past videos and teachings and preaching about conformism, this is major conformism. So I was born into a upcoming preacher family. My dad was a minister in training. We were living in Detroit, Michigan, up north in the late 50s and 60s. So yes, I was born into a Christian environment. The environment was so strict that we had, I remember as a child, church Wednesday night services, Sunday morning services, Sunday night services. We had maybe Friday night fellowships at church, prayer meetings. So basically my life was one engulfed in fundamentalist Christianity. That was my bubble. That was my entire life for the first 32 years of my life. So yeah, the child indoctrination started, of course, at birth. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it, Proverbs 22 says, right? But I did depart from it, sorry. It happened to me, and to many others. So yeah, it was a very, very strong Christian influence and environment. It was also, I would like to say, a very controlling, a very controlling environment. There was some pretty harsh discipline, yes. We've already discussed that in my previous episodes of biblical child rearing. There was a lot of physical punishment. There was a lot of harshness in those areas. So you may be thinking, oh, David, you're bitter, you're angry at your parents or Christianity. This is not the case. My parents and others who were authority figures over me and anybody else raised in Christianity were doing what they thought was right. Products of your environment, cultural conformism, if you will. So, yeah, my parents loved me dearly. I was just raised in that environment. That's all they knew. So there was some pretty harsh discipline for disobedience toward the heavenly God, right? And my earthly parents as well, and anyone else in authority. So also the background that I was raised in as a child, I would like to say was anti-reason, anti-science, anti-sex, anti-hedonism. The list goes on. Anti the world, as James chapter 4 clearly says, whosoever is a friend of the world is an enemy of God. Friendship of the world is at enmity with God. So the environment I was raised in this family, and church and Jesus and so forth, was the escape of the world and attaching one close to a personal relationship with Jesus. I remember many, many times as a child, a young boy, accepting Jesus as my Lord and Savior. So I want to make sure this is very comprehensible to those of you Christians that I did accept Christ. The Romans chapter 10 verse 9, the John chapter 3 verse 3, and all the other scriptures I used to preach as a young preacher, the born again experience. So I believe this to be true. There were many times I came to Jesus and asked him in my heart to live for God. So as far as was I a real Christian? Yeah, as much as anybody could be, and we will get into the detail on that coming up even in the next couple episodes and parts. So yeah, I accepted Christ at an early age, like many people do in church. So yes, a real Christian. Now, something happened in the late 60s, around 1969, back in the hippie days. And I remember the wonderful decade of the 60s where there were civil rights and human rights, and people began to rebel against authority in many ways. My dad took a church offered to him down in Waco, Texas. So in 1969, January 20th, I remember the day well, I was about 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old, actually almost 12, and we moved from Michigan to Central Texas. So my dad took a little church. It was a little Pentecostal church. He was sent out from the major church up in Michigan, where we were raised in Detroit, the big city. So my dad took a full-time position there. So yes, I'm a pastor's child. I know Christianity as well as anybody. I was in the depths of it. I know the whole environment, the culture. I know the jargon. I know the linguistics. I know the verbiage. I know the attitude. I sometimes know exactly what you're thinking, Christians. I'm a step ahead of you. I know that you're probably thinking now, I'm looking for an area in David's life where he went wrong. This is where Satan got in there. So I want to make sure you understand these rudimentary principles and concepts before we go any further. So yes, I was born in Christianity. Yes, I did accept Christ as my Savior. So 1969 up to about 1976 was what I would call a little more of my preteen and teenage rebellious years. I was always a little different than my older sibling, my brother, my younger sibling, my sister. Of course, all siblings differ in some ways, even though we have the same degree of relatedness from the same parents. But the genes are a little different in each of us, and they vary. I was always geared a little more towards science. I remember hanging out with my buddies. We would go out in the woods and hike. We would go out fishing as a preteen, and maybe 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. I remember observing nature and looking at birds and wildlife, and I always had an interest in the natural world. I remember lying in the backyard with my buddies. We were like 12 or 13 years old, pitched the tent in the backyard, sneaking little Playboy magazines like boys do, and looking at these beautiful, curvy females at this age of ours when our testosterone starts to kick in. Little did I know what was going on. Of course, my friends and I, were strong Christians, and we thought it was lust, but all it was biology working in us. But nobody explained that to us. We thought something was wrong with us. So anyways, I remember lying up, looking at the stars, talking to my friend Ruben and Mike, my best buddies, and saying to my friends, I just don't understand. How could those stars have just been created so quickly? How far does space go? How could God have lived forever? And I used to call it a brain attack. So my mind has always worked more in metaphysics or underlying nature of things and had more of an inquisitive mind. Those thoughts of skepticism was basically snuffed out later on, and I'll tell you why here in a moment. So, yeah, I was also very prone to the misfits, the untouchables in society. I've always had a heart and compassion for people that were the underdogs, disabled people, elderly people. People that would move into the school district from another school district, I would be the type of person that would befriend that person. So I've always had a real gentle, soft-hearted, benign heart for other people. Little did I know that's just being human. Back then, I just figured it was Jesus put that there, which a lot of you Christians believe. So, yes, I was a real Christian as a child, very strict environment, and yes, very strict discipline for any type of disobedience. So the fear of God was placed inside of me very strongly, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? That's in the Bible. Let me briefly take you quickly over the rebellious years, then we'll get into my preacher years and my Jesus-loving years. From about 1970 to 76, after the very strict years of child indoctrination, I started rebelling. Being the middle child, they're usually the more mischievous of the few. That's very common. So yeah, I experienced a bit of rebellion, tasting of the world and sin and so forth. Really didn't do a whole lot. Really didn't get into drugs. Drank a little bit. Got drunk a few times. Rebelled against my parents. Stayed out late. And so forth. So not a real rebel rouser by any means, but in my environment, I was a rebellious child. Ran away from home a couple times. My father chased me down the street with a rake in his hand one time. I made him pretty angry. So yeah, these things did occur as a teenager. So I began to question more and more and more of these beliefs that I was raised in. Though I still consider myself a Christian, I just began to have some doubts and fears of the fear and the fear of eternal hell. Fire and damnation lingered in me as well, lingered in my mind, like it does for most Christians. So taking you through the high school years, I would travel with the youth groups. Was never really involved too much in church other than just being a preacher's kid. The type of child I was, I remember one instance, this was probably when I was about 10 or 11 years old. My dad was serving communion this particular Sunday morning. Give you a good little laugh here. And I kind of snuck in the back of the church, and me and my buddy, and I kind of wanted to just be mischievous at that day for some reason. Yeah. So I remember going back there, sneaking back behind the deacons, and they already had the cups of grape juice, not the literal wine, for the communion service, already pre-poured in the communion servers. And so I went back there and just started guzzling each little individual cup of grape juice until they were all gone. I snuck back to the back seat. I guess I was a backslider at that time. And communion, the deacons started passing out the wine or the grape juice to the church members, and wow, were they upset when they found out there was no grape juice in the cup. So believe it or not, I got a good beating when I got home. So yes, did I deserve it? Maybe not a beating, but definitely a little bit of discipline there, or disapproval, or a little moral education why you don't do that to other people and disrespect them. So I remember instances when I was a child, as a preacher's kid, crawling under the pews and grabbing some of the old ladies' ankles, but with my hand and shaking their foot while my dad was preaching, or shooting spit wads in the hair of different people sitting in front of me at church. So sure, typical preacher's kid, acting out a little bit of rebellion there for attention and so forth. So typical middle child preacher's kid. By the time I was in my mid to late teens, my rebelliousness got a little more severe, and my questions toward this whole concept of God begin to occur in my mind. Little did I know I was already somewhat of a thinker. I didn't know what reason meant or rationality, because I was born in an environment where secondary education is useless. All you need is the Bible and God and Jesus to get through life. I do remember, though, hearing my father, and again, his heart was right. I'm not angry. In fact, my parents and I have a good relationship. It was always my choice. No one forced me to it. It was just the high cultural conformism and my parents raised me in the environment that they thought was best for me, right? The biblical Christian environment. But I remember many times questioning things that I had been taught. Periodically would come to my mind, and I would just push them aside, these doubts and these thoughts of how could this be? How could the earth only be 6,000 years old? So I put it aside. I brushed it aside. I remember hearing my father many times from the pulpit say these very words, that it would be a best case scenario, and he would be so blessed if his two sons, my older brother and myself, both were ministers, if we were both called into the ministry. So there was that conformism and that pressure to conform and to please my parents and my father by following his footsteps. So I'll take you up to 1976. We will end with part 1, and then we'll get to the good stuff in part 2 and part 3. The whole evolution, the evolutionary psychology, what happened that made me change my philosophy from two extreme worldviews. So by the time 1975 graduation for high school into 1976 was the pinnacle of my rebellious years. Started drinking a little bit here and there, causing my dad some fits, having some arguments and so forth. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop right here with part 1 of episode 1, My Story. We will continue with part 2, and part 2 will be the Jesus-loving preacher years. And I'm going to explain to you how much of a Christian and how real of a Christian I really was. So thank you for watching the Preaching Humanist with David Oliverio, that is I, episode 1, My Story. This is part 1 of episode 1. Remember, no God is required, no God belief is required for a life of love, joy, peace, fulfillment, and meaning in life. The good life is guided by reason and motivated by love. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon.